The tension hung heavy in the air as it was finally realized that peace talks were collapsing and war was inevitable. Taraxis, Hive Prince of Corsica faction, had gathered here for a modicum of peace, hoping to avoid the losses of his men. He sat in his chair opposite his former brethren with his 2 Praetorians flanking him, plasma spears at ready. His human diplomat, Johnny, was desperately trying to ease tensions. Arborian, the crown prince of Hive Arrakis, sat proud at his seat, his purple skin glistening in the light of the room. Arborian was so certain of his victory, he had the barefaced audacity to carry his human concubine with him. His human diplomat Martinez was unamused by tensions as he cast passing glances to the Praetorians flanking his employer. Arborian made sure to prominently display his most prized possession with the woman sitting on his lap. Surely we can find a way around this? There has to be a way to sue for peace. At least for this battle. Perhaps we can exclude some ships from the roster and at least make it an even fight. Johnny could sense he was getting nowhere, but he still had a few angles. Sure, we can sue for peace. After you hand over the system. Those Gehenna spice mines are ours and you damn well know it. Martinez slammed his hand on the table. You and I both know that if that fleet goes to battle it would be an absolute slaughter. If your master was half the warrior he so claims he is, he would agree to roster the battle to make it fair. Johnny blasted his opponent. Arborian whispered into his diplomat's ear. The shame tactic and personal attack worked. A point made in anger but still a point. We will agree to the standard galactic ship points allocation system. However, no holds barred. Last man standing rules only. Martinez said with a certain sinister grin. Taraxis hung his head in shame. The Queen would have his head after this one way or another for this, but at least it would give his men a fighting chance. He gave a nod to Johnny and sent him a note on his wearable data manager. Fine. If we win, you will not come back to this system. The point was proven, tactics ruled the day. If we win, you leave and don't come back. Arborian thought for a moment, then nodded his head. Deal, Martinez said, extending a hand out. Martinez and Johnny shook hands and started drawing up paperwork as Arborian began to greedily fondle his prized possession, much to the blistering rage of Taraxis' burning eyes. Suddenly the door flung itself open. A human marine barged through the door. Uncle Bernie's here, he yelled with unimaginable excitement, and charged back out again. Uncle Bernie? All 3 of the humans said this at once, and all 3 suddenly got up from where they stood and bolted to the exit with such speed it made everyone's head spin. A few moments of awkward and stunned silence followed this occurrence. What the hell is an Uncle Bernie? Arborian asked as if expecting an answer. Well, uncle is a human term, it means the brother of my father. Bernie is, I believe, someone's name. One of Taraxis' Praetorians said. The 2 princes regarded each other for a moment longer before one of Taraxis' Praetorians broke the silence as his communicator beeped. My prince. Every human ship in the system has disengaged. What? Both princes yelled out in unison. Warp signature detected. There is a battlecruiser-class vessel entering the system. Arborian's Praetorian warned. What treachery are you planning, Thraxis? Arborian lashed out. What are you talking about? This is your doing. How much did you bribe my ambassador HM? Just then, an interruption. Every communications unit on the station suddenly came to life. It was some kind of song? Silly, whimsical, catchy. Are you lost in space? Need pie in your face? Come on down to Bernie's. Do you need a drink? Well, that's a cinch. Come on down to Bernie's. Bernie's Bar and Grill is now open. Active servicemen get a beer on the house. All of the hivers on station and on their ships stood with absolute bewilderment as to what the flaming hell was going on. In the meantime, a very familiar-looking ship warped into the system, drowned out by a cheering crowd as all of the 12 human-made ships in the system swarmed it and docked as soon as it was safe. Thraxis stood from his seat and made his way to the exit. And just where do you think you are going? Arborian said with annoyance. Beer. Thraxis moved down the concourse ramp to his shuttle and waited as his Praetorian guard, and hastily at their heels, Arborian and his guards, caught up and sat down. Thraxus called the robotic driver to go to the human ship, Uncle Bernie's. The driver, a machine, let out a happy beep for some reason and with careless abandon charged his way to the ship. Uncle Bernie's was a battlecruiser class. The 6 hivers took careful note of its exterior. It was several times larger than most human warships, and 10 times more heavily armed. Mounted in various spots were storage tanks that looked like distilleries, and one could clearly see the ship had its own hydroponics and protein synthesis bays built into the hull. The human support ships had been completely emptied by the time the shuttle made it to one of the airlocks. The robot driver let out a mechanical woo-hoo as it hopped out of its car and hastily wheeled its way into the ship's maintenance bays. Even the machines were entranced by this ship. The 6 hivers made their way through the clearly marked hallways into a massive restaurant. Immediately they were surrounded by humans of all classes and types who immediately reacted to their presence with a loud, "Ahoy matey!" of approval before returning to the meals they were enjoying. The restaurant had over 200 humans in it, but could comfortably seat 1,000 more. The place was a massive circular arboretum, surrounded on every corner by restaurants, eateries, and even a quaint little gift shop. "What in the Queen's tits is this place?" one of Thraxus' Praetorians thought aloud. "I can answer that, my man. Welcome to my humble restaurant and bar," a human suddenly spoke up from behind the group. The 6 turned around to the sight of a gray-bearded human with a large midsection, a tool belt with cooking utensils in a strange uniform with a funny hat. "Who are you?" "I'm Uncle Bernie. Shut your holes and drink a beer. Activer servicemen get 1 free beer," he excitedly said, then jammed a purple aluminium can into everyone's hands. At this point Thraxus was what humans would call done. So he took a taste of the beverage. My goodness! His expression instantly changed to one of happiness as he drank more. Arborian timidly took a sip of his own can of beer. "By the mother!" he exclaimed, then chugged the rest of it down with a fist raised high. Bernie regarded his new customers with a hearty smile and led them all to a table before serving them a pizza. Within a few moments of them sitting down, Arborian's concubine Jessica returned to her master's lap with flushed cheeks and a silly giggle. The 2 ambassadors arrived as well, carrying a family-sized 2-cheese pizza with mushroom, onion, and smoked ham. Jessica showed them how to eat a pizza by grabbing a slice, then squealing in delight as she tasted the slice. Martinez and Johnny likewise did the same, sighing in happiness as though it was their first Christmas. The hivers tentatively took their own slice of the delicious-smelling confection and took a small, cautious bite. Thraxus gave it one taste and threw decorum to the wind and began to aggressively scarf the slice down. The 4 Praetorians likewise did the same, followed by Arborian, who had Jessica feed it to him. Thraxus sat back in his seat, carefully considering a small fact he suddenly noticed. This place was rather empty. Uncle Bernie approached and smiled his usual mustachioed smile. "Can I get ya anything else, boys? There's plenty for all." Thraxus suddenly perked up. "Yes, a la carte." He looked at his all-too-happy Praetorian guard. "Yes, my burp prince," he said. "Hand me your communicator. Patch me into the fleet." Alakarn did as commanded. "This is Thraxus, Prince of Hive Cathorn. All ships are to immediately disengage operations and report to Uncle Bernie's for lunch." He stopped, after Johnny handed him a piece of napkin with something scrawled on it. "And also, anyone who does not leave a tip will be shot." Arborian followed suit, commanding his own substantial naval forces and military to stand down, placing several thousand takeout orders for the planet and station at Martinez's instructions. Within minutes, the ship was flooded with 1,000 hivers from both factions. To Arborian and Thraxus' astonished shock, Uncle Bernie was there to meet them. All of them. Thraxus noted this and asked Martinez what the hell was going on. "What, my lord?" Martinez asked, confused. "There's Uncle Bernie. And there too. Am I seeing a strange genetic anomaly, or is this man a clone?" he said, bewildered. "Well, yeah, that's Uncle Bernie there, and there too, and that's Frank actually. He's Uncle Bernie too, but he likes to be called Frank." Martinez said, gesturing to the chefs and cooks of all the various restaurants. "Care to elaborate? Please," Arborian said as he held a sleeping Jessica in his arms. "Uncle Bernie, my prince, is a human that owned and operated a restaurant at an old shipbuilding yard before Seoul was lost called Jupiter Drive Yards. After about 20 years on the job with that very restaurant, the company gave him one of our old refurbished Munificent-class ornament ships. That's what this ship is. It's based on an old Trade Federation Munificent class in old Star Wars movies," Martinez explained, sitting down with a new can of beer. "MI's, a lot of other restaurants and food franchises exist, but none come close to Bernie's. He turned that ship into a roving restaurant and was there when Seoul collapsed. He's been everywhere, just roams the stars, feeding and hydrating anyone he comes across at an absolutely rock-bottom price. He even caters to machine consciousness because the tech cults have a presence on this ship. All in all, Bernie is just a nice guy who just wants to own a restaurant. And damn does he do a good job." Johnny responded in kind as he helped himself to a hot dog. "And in order to ensure I can provide the service that is needed, nay, demanded of my establishment, I opted to do some cloning and mind copying, just to keep it all running how it needs to be. We share somewhat of a Gestalt consciousness too, so it makes things a lot easier. Now, perhaps I can interest anyone in our dessert menu," Uncle Bernie said, firing up the ice cream makers and waffle irons. In the end, with all that had happened, neither side was ready or willing to engage in warfare. Both sides were either too full, too sleepy, or too drunk to do any fighting. When the hangovers and bellyaches passed, there was a strange feeling of contentedness between the two factions. Both of them essentially forgot why they were fighting and were too stuffed, happy, or filled up to bother asking. Martinez and Johnny drew up plans for the conflict anyway, but they were never used. In all, Arborian and Thraxus agreed to a 50-50 split of resources in the star system, ultimately benefiting everyone, especially Bernie. One of the conditions of peace talks was that Bernie always come round at least once every 3 months for a good booze up. Because after all, everyone loves Uncle Bernie.